I woke up to the fact that I had been manipulated into acting and thinking and approaching life like a guy. I thought I was a sexually liberated woman. I was a feminist, and I worked in the very male dominated world of sports television, live sports television, working for all the networks here in the United States and for the BBC, by the way. And I literally woke up in this conversation with this shaman talking about the sexual dynamics and gender dynamics in his tribe in the Amazon. He was talking about how men and women had very sexual gender specific roles. The women did the domestic stuff, wild food gathering, taking care of the family, feeding, and men went out and hunted and fished and built the canoes. But he said, when it comes to equality, he said there's never even a question. He said, of course we're absolutely equal. We're different, we operate differently in this world, and so our tribe honors that. And he said, so in tribal council, men and women are equally represented and equally important, and their voices are equal. He said, but there's one job, there's one job in the tribe that only the women can do. And I was like, yeah, 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 have babies. And he was like, well, yeah, that's important, but that's not what I'm talking about. He said, because we recognize the difference between men and women. He said, we honor the energetic, the consciousness of the feminine as much as the masculine. He said, the guys are out there doing and driving, and we're very focused and linear. And he said, we'll cut down trees until there's nothing left standing. We don't have an off switch. We'll hunt until there's nothing left to kill. Now, the women are very intuitive. They're grounded to the earth. They are receptive to the dynamics of the health of the whole, starting with the family, then the community, the tribe, and then the larger community of our relationship with nature. The women are in balance with all of that because they're restful, they're receptive, they're intuitive. They're not on all the time doing this. He said, so the most important job of the tribe is the women tell the men when to stop.
Mm.
Literally, Elizabeth, this was 1999 when I had this conversation. That stopped me in my tracks. And I barely actually heard anything he said after that, because I realized I didn't have an off switch. I was go, 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 pedal to the metal, typical Western female in a frenzy to accomplish something in my life, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with accomplishing something. But I realized in that moment that I'd been raised to be a guy. I didn't have an off switch. And so that initiated my initial exploration into the whole subject matter of gender. I mean, the very idea that women were different from men, I mean, it raised the hackles on the back of my neck, because I'd been programmed to think that of women in terms of, oh, feminine, soft and pliable and weak and helpless, just, and I started to revamp my assessment of, well, what are the yin energetic characteristics? And, the yin characteristics are receptivity, softness. The feminine in Eastern traditions is associated with darkness, the darkness of the womb, the darkness of night. The yin energetics are concave, inward, hollowness. It's also the yin's energetic side of electromagnetics is passive and restful, receptive, reflective, supportive, soft, nourishing, multidimensional, multitasking. And the yang side, however you want to pronounce it, it's the sun, it's the light of day, it's white, it's the intellect, it's structure, it's fixed, it's intellect, it's hard and unyielding and rigid and generative and linear and singular and hot and fire. And, and I was like, oh my God, these are energetics describing literally the foundation of the universe, the yin and the yang, the electromagnetic polarity of positive and negative electromagnetic forces. And, and I went back to the realization that the very, very first thing that was ever created after the Big Bang, less than a second into the Big Bang, we had electromagnetic polarity. We had positrons and electrons. We had the yang and the yin. And
Mm.
when I started to reflect on all of this, I realized, I was a big time meditator, and because I was focused very youngly on enlightenment and accomplishing that. And I realized, oh my God, everything that I'm doing is to put me into this more yin state of receptive. That passivity was not just being a blob on the sofa eating bonbons, it was receptive to multidimensional information outside of the fixed structure of the yang, of the polarized masculine world. And so when I wrote Unearthing Venus, that was my exploration of, well, how the heck had I been hijacked into trying to be like a guy and thinking that equality with men meant me having to adopt all masculine characteristics. It's about how we express in these bodies at the most fundamental basics of the universe, masculine, feminine, yin and yang, electromagnetic polarity, which doesn't, and everybody, of course, that brings up the binary word, which is another massive hot button socially. And well, yeah, we live in a binary created universe, but that doesn't mean we're limited into two separate camps, because it's all about unity. The yin yang symbol is not, two fixed, opposing forces, is complementary forces that work together as a unified one. So what we've missed entirely is that this whole masculine feminine split isn't a split at all. It's opportunities of how fluidly we can operate through all the electromagnetic spectrum of characteristic traits and energetic traits of yin and yang. Not all men are rigid and structured, and not all women are fluid and receptive, but we incorporate both yin and yang characteristics and traits. So the field of expression for humanity is infinite. But we're locked into these, okay, let's make sex a method of division and controversy and conflict. And so, well, how can we do that? Well, let's make this camp wrong. Gays and lesbians and trans people are all bad, and we should, it says so in the Bible, so let's put them against this camp. And then you have war, you have dissension, you have conflict, and everybody then misses the boat, which is the whole point, that we are one. We are infinite beings. We're beings of love. We have infinite capacity and fluidity to express any way and through this entire spectrum. So it's a divide and conquer, distract, and it's what it's a war tactic as ancient as war itself. Rather than back to these binary camps again, if we can't lock everybody into pro and con, male and female, trans and queer, or whatever, if we can't lock you into a box, then oh shit, we lose control.
But then that puts a different spin on the whole transgender thing. So, maybe it isn't an agenda. Maybe it is a part of this, what do we call it? Ascension. I mean, I don't know what to call it really these days. This part of this evolution, spiritual evolution that we're all on. Maybe the souls have come in as this is part of their spiritual evolution.
You're saying, and I concur, it's not either or, it's both. These are interdimensional entities. They're operating at a frequency way down here. We're way up here. So how can I feed? I can feed and I can infiltrate and I can bring the energy down and bring the energy down. But by influencing the divine human to lower its own light through its own belief in its own shame and its own sinfulness and its own crappiness and its own untrustworthiness, and I hate myself and I hate myself, and then finally I'm food. How do we do this? We create division and war. So, but back to your really brilliant question about, is this not also an evolutionary progress? I absolutely believe it is. To be able to become fluid across these demarcated uh, uh, plastic identities that are ridiculous. Yes, they're moving beyond, they're breaking down these barriers. It's brilliant. Androgyny, ultimately, we're divine spirits. We don't have genitalia on the etheric. I mean, well, on the etheric level, I suppose we do because that's the blueprint. But beyond that, we don't have sex. We're one being, this divine universal source consciousness, brilliant love. That's what we are. So androgyny is a reflection of that. For those who are truly aligned with that frequency, not mentally, politically manipulated to mutilate their bodies and become a drone, two different things. The same thing happened with the feminist movement in the or mid 20th century. It's bizarre to me to look back on my own life as like a century ago. But anyway, women had to break the shackles of their, they were chattel. And so the only opportunity and pathway to that was to break out of their own self-identification as the weaker sex. And so they stepped into the arena of the masculine and they grew balls. We toughed up, we manned up. Look at the language. We manned up. We learned to be aggressive. We learned to fight. We learned to stand up for ourselves. We learned to be linear and structured and intellectual and go and on button. That's evolution. That's the feminine over here. I'm moving into my masculine archetype and I'm bringing it all together so I can be a whole human being. I'm this beautiful, beautiful, receptive, intuitive, dancing, open, feminine, and I am this powerful, structured masculine that can get shit done. Wow, I'm a whole being. So, yeah, it was evolution in action. And then there was a twist because that's back to the agenda of mind control. How can we manipulate this natural, necessary evolution of the female to adopt more masculine, energetic, yang characteristics, which drove the men to start to adopt more feminine? So both camps have been moving in this evolutionary flow towards becoming whole human beings that can express across the full spectrum of yin-yang electromagnetic polarized but complementary energetic characteristics. But the agenda comes in and goes, how can we screw with this so that we can pit men and women against one another? How can we create division and conflict? How can we create more judgment and hatred? Yeah, the whole feminist movement, great evolutionary push, twisted.